If you've spent thousands of dollars on sales training programs, hired expensive coaches, or sent your team to a 3-day seminar only to see zero diddly squat improvement in their close rates, this video is going to save you from ever making that mistake again. But first of all, my name is Craig Emsley, and after talking with tons of high-ticket business owners and running an 8-figure sales team myself, I kept seeing the same pattern over and over and over again. Business owners will have no doubt in their mind to invest $10, $20, even $50,000 in sales training, and 3 months later, their team is performing basically performing the exact same. Or sometimes I've even seen that the sales team took a step backwards and performed worse than ever before. And the business owners are basically left wondering if they just hired the wrong people in the first place, or if sales training is complete and utter bullshit. Now, here's the actual truth. Around 95% of sales training is specifically designed for corporate environments selling low-ticket products to warm leads. And when you try to apply those specific techniques to high-ticket B2B sales environments, it fails spectacularly. Now, today in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why most sales training fails and the 3 specific things that actually move the needle forward for high-ticket sales teams. Now, let me start with the biggest problem, okay? And that is that most sales training treats your experienced closers like they're starting from zero. Now, the first thing that comes to mind in the story is that I was helping a business owner who sent his $200,000 per year closer to a 3-day sales boot camp. Now, this guy was already training and already converting at around 35% in a high-ticket environment. However, the owner of the business still wanted it to be higher. So he actually sent this person to that 3-day boot camp. But the specific training was actually focused on basic objection handling, elevator pitches, and cold calling techniques. And not only did this experienced closer feel insulted, but he came back trying to apply this generic scripts to high-ticket prospects who could smell the bullshit from a mile away. Now, what happened was that his close rate actually dropped to 22%, and it stayed there for 2 months until we provided the owner with some guidance and he fixed the damage that was already made. Now, let's look at, let's look at why most sales training fails. And in order to do that, let's just hop right into the iPad as well. So problem number 1 why most sales training fails specifically is that they provide generic training for a specific problem. Now, again, most sales training programs are basically like a one-size-fits-all program, right? They don't distinguish between selling a $97 software subscription and a $25,000 consulting package. And what you know and what you should know already by watching this is that the psychology between those 2 price tags is completely different. The sales cycle is different. The objections are different. And the decision-making process is completely different. But these programs basically teach you the same techniques regardless of what you're trying to sell or who you're selling to. Now, the second problem is that basically let me backtrack real quick and just say that the second major flaw, I should say, is that most training is theoretical, right? They teach you the frameworks and methodologies in a classroom setting, right? But they never actually practice real life scenarios from within your business. So your closer walks away knowing the spin selling model or the challenger sale approach, but they have no freaking idea how to apply it when a prospect, for example, says, I need to think about it after you just presented them with a $15,000 solution to their problem. Very, very important. Now, problem number 3 is that there's actual no accountability or follow-up, right? And this is what really irks me, right? You spend $5,000 on someone, to push them into training. They come back with a binder full of notes and then crickets, nothing. no follow-up, no accountability, no measurement whether anything actually improved, right? It's basically like sending somebody to the gym for a week, expecting them to stay in shape for the rest of the year by only doing 1 week of training, right? It's not gonna happen. Now, the fourth problem is basically closers ignoring your existing systems, right? Now, most training programs completely ignore your existing sales process, right? And they might not even know things such as your CRM or your lead sources or your specific offer, right? They teach generic approaches that might work in theory, but they don't integrate with how your business actually operates on a day-to-day business. Now, what you will see will happen is that your closer basically comes back trying to implement a new discovery process that doesn't work with your 45-minute call structure, or attempting to use closing techniques that doesn't match your service delivery model, right? Now, let's look at some things, the 3 things actually specifically that actually move the needle and actually work, right? Now, after you've seen what doesn't work, right, let me just hop right in and show you what actually moves the needle for high ticket sales teams. Now, the first thing, right, we're gonna call them the 3 things that actually work, right? Thing number 1 is real world role playing, right? And this is super important, right? Forget generic objection handling, please. Instead, record your actual sales calls, right? And then identify the top 5 objections your closers face in specific business basically in whatever business you are running, right? Now, basically a shortcut to this is just upload the scripts to ChatGPT and ask GPT for your 5 most objections that your closers are facing, right? And then what you're gonna do is you're basically gonna go back and create, right, a role-playing scenario based on those exact situations that GPT basically provided you with, right? And the goal of this, right, is basically to train your closers and get them up to par with the current objections you are facing. Then after you've received those objections from GPT, create real-world role-playing scenarios based on those exact objections. Not the prospect, says they cannot afford it, but the prospect says, we've tried working with other consultants before and it didn't work out. So I'm really hesitant to spend $20,000 on another consultant, okay? This is the specific objections your team faces, and they need to practice those specific responses that works within your specific business, right? Now, how to implement this, you might be asking? Well, let's just look at some steps that you can follow here. So step number 1 is that you're basically going to review your last 50 sales calls and identify the most common objections, concerns, and sticking points, right? And specifically, remember, just upload all of these scripts to GPT and ask GPT for exactly what I just told you, right? Now, step number 2 is that you're gonna create role-playing scenarios that mirror those exact situations, right? Including the context that led up to them getting that objection, right? Because maybe that objection came forth because the discovery phase wasn't done correctly, right? You always want to handle objections before they actually become objections, okay? Now, step number 3 is have your team practice these scenarios weekly, right? Not in a training room, but during the actual call time that they have, right? Live practice on real life leads, right? And step number 4 is record these practice sessions and review them together, right? Focusing on what works and also focus on what doesn't work, right? Now, the key difference is that you're actually practicing real scenarios they'll face tomorrow, right? Not theoretical scenarios they will never ever encounter, right? So let's move into thing number 2, right? So thing number 2 is, call recording analysis and feedback loops specifically, right? And this is where most businesses completely and utterly fail, right? They either don't record the calls at all, right? Or they record them but never review them systematically, right? Which is, my point is, like, why gather data if you're not going to use it? Don't gather that data in the first place if you're not going to use that data and act on that data, right? So super important, right? Now, here's the framework that actually works, right? First is the weekly call review process. So every single week, right, select 2 to 3 calls from each closer. One win, one loss, and one that could have gone either way, right? And then review these calls together and identify the following things. Number one, what specific moments led to the close or the loss of the sale, right? Number two, what questions uncovered the most valuable information, right? Number three, how did they handle those specific objections, right? And ask yourself whether it moved the conversation forward or backwards, right? And number four, finally, basically ask yourself, where could they have built more value or urgency during that sales call? Okay, but here's the absolute critical part, right? Don't just identify what went wrong. Identify what to do differently next time, right? And practice it with them, right? Because if a closer lost a deal because they couldn't handle a specific objection, don't just tell them what they should have said. Role play that exact scenario over and over and over again until they can handle it with until they can be confident that they can handle that objection the next time it comes with them. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to touch on here is your actual feedback loops, right? So week one, right, just identify the issue through call reviews, right? Week two, practice the solution through role play. Week three, apply it on live calls. And week four, review the results and refine the approach. Okay. Now, what you're going to see is that this creates a continuous improvement cycle based on real performances, not theoretical knowledge, right? Now, let's move on to thing number 3 over here, which is the compensation alignment. Okay. And here's what most training programs completely ignore, right? And I don't blame them because they don't know your specific price point, your offer, and so on and so forth. But if your compensation structure doesn't reward the behavior you're trying to train, the training will fail in the first place, right? For an example, I was helping a business owner who basically wanted his closer to focus on larger deals and longer sales cycles, believe it or not. But his commission structure paid the same percentage regardless of the deal size, and he had monthly quotas, right, that pressured closers to take quick, smaller deals, right? How is that gonna basically incentivize this closer to focus on the larger deals if it's getting paid the same on smaller deals, right? Now, the training specifically focused on consultative selling and building long-term relationships, but the compensation structure rewarded fast closes, excuse me, and high volume, right? Again, guess which behavior won, right? Now, if you want your closers to focus on higher value deals, create a commission tier or structure that rewards larger transactions or larger deals exponentially, not linearly, right? So reward the bigger deals if you want your closer to close bigger deals, right? Pay more for those bigger deals. Now, if you want them to improve their discovery process specifically, right? Track and reward metrics like qualification accuracy and, things such as prospect preparation, not just their close rates, right? Now, what if you want them to build better relationships? Well, measure and reward things like referral generation and client satisfaction scores, right? Now, the point is your training efforts and your compensation structure have to be aligned and glued together, right? Or you are just going to be wasting your specific money, right? Now, let's move into the implementation framework that actually freaking works, okay? So what you're gonna do in week number 1, this is your assessment phase, right? So what you're gonna do is review your last 30 days of sales calls and identify the top 5 objections and sticking points, right? And then you're gonna evaluate whether your current compensation structure supports your training goals, okay? Week number 2 is you're gonna basically be creating real world scenarios, right? So develop and go out there and develop role play scenarios based on your actual objections you're receiving on your sales calls, right? Then what you're gonna do is schedule weekly call review sessions with your closers and adjust the compensation metrics if needed, okay? Now, week number 3 is actually the implementation phase, right? So what you're gonna do is start your weekly call review process, right? And what you're gonna do is actually begin role-playing sessions focused on real scenarios and then track leading indicators, not just the close rate. Not everything has to do with the close rate, right? Now, week number 4 is actually going to be the refinement stage. So basically just go in and review what's working and what isn't, and then adjust these scenarios, right, based on new insights, and then create accountability measures for continued improvement. Okay, now what are mistakes that you basically want to avoid, right? Well, mistake number 1 is just trying to fix everything, right, at once, instead of just focusing on one skill or one objection at a time. Master the first objection, right, and then move on to the next one after that. The second mistake that I see is just having generic role playing, and you just use generic objections, right, not actual objections that they're actually getting in your business specifically, right? The third mistake I see is that there's no follow-up training, and please remember that this is an ongoing process, right? Schedule regular review sessions and stick to them, okay? Now, number 4, the fourth mistake that I see is that there's a misalignment between the comp structure and the training programs, right? Like we just talked about. So basically, you want to fix your compensation structure and reward things that you are actually looking to get out of your closers, right? Now, look, if you keep spending money on generic sales training programs, right, and you keep going down that path and hope that something will stick, right, you can keep doing that, or you can implement a system that can actually work for high ticket sales, right? And please remember, the difference between businesses that succeed with sales training and those that fail isn't the program they choose, right? It's whether they customize the training to their specific business and create systems for ongoing improvement. Okay, again, start this week with a call review session, right? Pick 3 calls from the last week and analyze them with your team. I guarantee you'll learn more in 1 hour than most people get from a 3-day seminar, right? And if you need help building a sales team that doesn't need constant training because they're already elite performers, that's exactly what we do here at Sales Match. We place closers and appointment setters who come with a proven track record and the skills they need to succeed from day 1. If you're interested in us staffing your sales team, there's a link down below for that. But other than that, I really hope that this video helped you basically structure your sales team and make sure that their incentives are aligned. Until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.